The International Automobile Federation thought Hamilton's 5-second penalty would end the argument. It may have started the biggest trust crisis of Monaco, because Ferrari is now demanding the one thing every governing body fears when the paddock is already suspicious: the data. Hamilton was punished for exceeding the 60 km/h pit lane limit. But Monaco did not produce one penalty. It produced a wave. Gasly lost a podium. Alpine pushed for review. Ferrari wants full transparency. And suddenly, the question is no longer whether drivers should obey the rules. Of course they should. The real question is whether the system enforcing those rules can prove it was right. Because if the official measurements are clean, Ferrari has to accept a painful truth. But if Hamilton's data shows even one mismatch, one calibration issue, or one weakness in the pit lane system, then Monaco was not just controversial. It may have been decided by numbers nobody outside race control could fully trust. And before this goes any deeper, subscribe to the channel. Monaco is the one race where 5 seconds can feel like a lifetime. Not because 5 seconds is a huge number on its own. In normal life, 5 seconds disappears before you even notice it. It is the time it takes to glance at a phone, open a door, or take one deep breath. But in Monaco, 5 seconds can destroy everything. Because Monaco does not give drivers second chances. It does not open wide straights where a faster car can recover. It does not offer easy overtaking zones where a champion can simply fight back. It does not give teams much room to repair damage once track position is lost. Monaco is a locked room. And once the door closes, even Lewis Hamilton can be trapped inside. That is why Ferrari's anger matters so much. Hamilton's penalty was not just an annoying time addition at the end of a chaotic Grand Prix. It was a punishment in the one place where a punishment can become almost impossible to overcome. At another circuit, Ferrari might have looked at the numbers, taken the hit, and moved forward with frustration. But Monaco is different. In Monaco, a 5-second penalty is not only 5 seconds. It is strategy lost. It is pressure wasted. It is a result clouded by doubt. And for Ferrari, that doubt is the real problem. Because the official explanation sounds simple. Hamilton exceeded the pit lane speed limit. The limit was 60 km/h. The stewards applied a 5-second penalty. On paper, that looks clean, sharp, and impossible to argue with. But Formula One does not live only on paper. It lives in the gap between what the rule says, what the sensors measure, what the teams see in their own data, and what the driver feels inside the car. And when those things do not feel perfectly aligned, a simple penalty can become a serious accusation. That is what happened in Monaco. Ferrari is not pretending the pit lane limit does not matter. Nobody serious can say that. The pit lane is one of the most dangerous areas at any Formula One circuit. Mechanics are close to the cars. Officials and team staff are moving in tight spaces. The difference between controlled speed and dangerous speed is not just sporting. It is human. So the rule has to exist. But here is where the story begins to turn. A safety rule can be necessary and still require total transparency. That is the line Ferrari is pushing. They are not just asking why Hamilton was punished. They are asking how the punishment was measured. Where exactly was the speed detected? Was the system calibrated correctly? Did the official reading match Ferrari's own data from the car? Was Hamilton clearly over the line, or was this a tiny margin amplified by a system nobody has fully explained to the public? Those questions are not small. They cut straight into the credibility of the International Automobile Federation. Because if the governing body can show the numbers clearly, the argument becomes painful but simple. Hamilton was over the limit. Ferrari must accept it. The team must adjust its procedures, give him a wider margin, and make sure the same thing never happens again. But if the numbers are not clear, the whole story changes. Then Hamilton's penalty becomes more than a driver mistake. It becomes a warning sign. And that is exactly why Monaco has become so dangerous for the International Automobile Federation. Because Hamilton was not alone. That single fact makes the controversy much bigger. If only Hamilton had been punished, people could have turned it into a Ferrari story. A superstar story. A familiar debate where some fans defend him, others blame him, and the sport moves on after a few days. But Monaco produced a wave of pit lane penalties. Gasly was punished. Piastri was punished. Colapinto was punished. Perez and Russell were dragged into the wider penalty chaos. The race became less about who could survive the streets, and more about who could survive the rulebook. And when one rule catches multiple drivers in the same Grand Prix, the paddock starts asking a different kind of question. Not, did one driver make an error? But why did the same problem appear again and again? That is the word that should worry the International Automobile Federation. Pattern. Formula One teams are trained to fear patterns. One failure might be bad luck. Two failures might be coincidence. But repeated failures force engineers, strategists, and team principals to look deeper. They compare data. They check systems. They replay the timing. They question whether the issue came from the driver, the car, the software, the procedure, or the measuring system itself. And after Monaco, that is exactly where the pressure is moving. Ferrari wants to know whether Hamilton's penalty was truly unavoidable. Alpine is already pushing its own challenge after Pierre Gasly lost what looked like a Monaco podium. Other teams affected by pit lane penalties will also want to understand whether their drivers were caught by clean enforcement or by a system that needs deeper review. This is how one penalty becomes a crisis, not because teams dislike rules. Every team dislikes penalties, but that is not enough to create this level of tension. The tension comes when teams begin to wonder whether the rule was enforced with enough precision to justify the damage it caused. And in Monaco, the damage was heavy. Hamilton's result was clouded. Ferrari's momentum was interrupted. Gasly's podium disappeared. Alpine's anger became formal. That may work in a rulebook. It does not work with a global audience that has already seen too many controversial decisions in modern Formula One. The sport now lives in a world where every radio message is clipped, every replay is slowed down, every fan base builds its own case, and every unclear decision becomes a battlefield within minutes. Authority is no longer enough. The proof has to be visible. That is the lesson Monaco is teaching. For Alpine, the proof is about Gasly's lost podium. For Ferrari, it is about Hamilton's 5 seconds. For the International Automobile Federation, it is about the credibility of an entire enforcement process. And for the fans, it is about something even simpler. Can they trust the result? That question sounds basic, but it is everything. A fan can accept Gasly losing a podium if the evidence is clear. They can accept Hamilton being punished if the numbers are undeniable. They can accept strict pit lane rules if the enforcement is transparent. What they struggle to accept is being told the result changed, while the decisive evidence stays mostly hidden. That is where suspicion grows. Suspicion does not need proof at first. It only needs a gap. A gap between what fans saw and what officials decided. A gap between team data and official readings. A gap between a driver's confidence and a penalty notice. A gap between the emotional result on track and the official result after review. Monaco created that gap, and Alpine stepped directly into it. That is why this is not only Hamilton's fight anymore. It is not only Ferrari's frustration. It is a wider challenge from teams that believe the sport must explain itself better when penalties have race-changing consequences. And the more teams involved, the harder it becomes for the governing body to dismiss the issue as one team protecting its driver. This is how a revolt begins in Formula One. Not always with shouting. Sometimes with data requests. Sometimes with formal reviews. Sometimes with one team demanding transparency, while another team challenges the mechanism, while the rest of the paddock quietly watches to see whether the wall cracks. And make no mistake, the rest of the paddock will be watching. Because today it is Hamilton and Gasly. Tomorrow it could be any driver entering a pit lane with a limit, a sensor, and a race result on the line. Every team has a reason to care. Even the teams that benefited from the penalties have a reason to care, because they could be on the other side next time. Nobody wants to discover too late that the system they trusted may be questioned only after the points are gone. That is why the International Automobile Federation must handle this carefully. If it rejects Alpine's review too quickly, without enough explanation, many will believe it is protecting the original decision. If it opens the review and reveals strong data, it can restore confidence. If it opens the review and exposes uncertainty, the controversy becomes much bigger. Every path has risk, but silence has the greatest risk of all. Because silence lets other people write the story. And right now, the story people are writing is dangerous. They are saying Hamilton was unfairly punished. They are saying Gasly was robbed. They are saying Ferrari has evidence. They are saying Alpine is revolting. They are saying Monaco was decided by invisible numbers. Some of that may be emotional. Some of it may go further than the confirmed facts. But that is exactly why clarity is needed. When official explanation is weak, speculation becomes powerful. And Formula One cannot let speculation become stronger than its own evidence. This is where Ferrari's position becomes smart. They do not need to claim the entire system is broken. They only need to ask for the data. They do not need to say Hamilton deserves special treatment. They only need to point to the pattern. They do not need to overturn everything immediately. They only need to keep pressure on the governing body until the explanation is strong enough to satisfy the damage done. That is a much stronger strategy than pure outrage, because pure outrage fades, evidence pressure grows. And if Alpine's review adds fuel to that pressure, the International Automobile Federation may find itself facing the one thing it cannot easily manage with a penalty notice: a united demand for transparency. That would be a major shift. Formula One teams argue with each other constantly. They rarely agree unless the issue affects everyone. Pittsburgh lane measurement affects everyone. Strict enforcement affects everyone. Unclear calibration affects everyone. A system that can move points after the race affects everyone. So even if teams do not publicly line up behind Ferrari and Alpine, many will quietly want the same answer. Show us how you know. That sentence is the real threat. Because if the International Automobile Federation can show how it knows, it wins back authority. If it cannot, authority begins to look like secrecy. And secrecy is not sustainable in a sport where every tiny detail can decide millions of dollars, championship points, and the reputation of drivers and teams. This is why Alpine's move may become the turning point of the whole Monaco controversy. Hamilton's penalty made the story famous. Ferrari's demand made it political. But Alpine's formal push gives it a mechanism, a path, a way for the questions to move from interviews and fan outrage into official review territory. And once questions enter official territory, they become harder to ignore, because the outcome will tell everyone something. If Alpine fails, the International Automobile Federation can say the rules stood, the system worked, and teams must adapt. That would not erase all anger, but it would slow the revolt. If Alpine succeeds, even in a limited way, Ferrari will have a reason to press harder. Hamilton's penalty will be examined through a new lens. Every similar pit lane sanction from Monaco will feel connected. And the sport will face the possibility that one of its most prestigious races was overshadowed by a measurement controversy that should have been clearer from the beginning. That is why the next move matters so much. Not because it decides only Gasly's result, because it may decide whether Hamilton's penalty remains a painful isolated moment or becomes part of a much larger case against how Monaco was handled. And that is the danger now facing the International Automobile Federation. The governing body is no longer defending a single penalty. It is defending the belief that its invisible systems deserve visible trust. And after Monaco, Ferrari and Alpine are no longer willing to give that trust away for free.